What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is, and welcome back to another video with your man, Measureholic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my Total War Rome 2 campaign for Divided Impera, Episode 6. We're at Episode 6 now. I love it. I'm loving having these numbers getting bigger and bigger. Anyway, welcome. Today we are getting started with the First Punic War. That is right. If you guys will remember last episode, Carthage declared war on us. We are currently at war with the Illyrians to the east, and we are just waiting for the Gauls to the north to declare war on us. But before we dive into all these massive battles that we're probably going to have coming up as the campaign progresses, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of a rundown on what consolidating I've done. So we'll start here with Rome. Rome is currently the powerhouse of our economy. It is netting us a lot of money, more taxes than any of our cities, even more than southern Italy combined, really. And it's basically just from taxes. Rome itself never had any resources to produce, really. It's quite a historical, well, it is a historical fact, but it's also reflected in the gameplay here, where it doesn't actually produce any resources besides taxes. And since we have such a large population, it's our home province, we're going to get some decent taxes. Now, I do have an amphitheater there that's going to give us a little bit of money, which will help. And I'll be upgrading that so we can get some special buildings such as the Colosseum, which is going to be awesome later on. To the north, we are going to be going through the rest of the towns here. I'm going to be right-clicking on some of the buildings just so you can see a little bit more detail in them. I'm not going to go through every single building and what it produces. I'll just hover over it for a few seconds and show you guys and give you a brief rundown. So over here to the east, Asculum and Ariminum are our coastal towns that we have at the moment, at least in Latium. Asculum is more of a fishing place, although it actually does have a trading harbor. All of our traders, you can see on the campaign map, is coming through Ariminum, and that makes it a vital town to hold. As you can see there, we get well over 4,000 in imports alone. We're making some serious money from trading, and we really need to make sure that that port stays open. So we're going to be upgrading that to a harbor when I can, and then I'll probably be changing Asculum to a fishing port at some point. One thing you'll notice is that wherever possible, I will be building and upgrading resources, such as over here in the west, where we will be building wine and not building wine, I should say. We're building vineyards and whatnot to produce wine, because wine is one of the most valuable things in the game, actually. And luckily for us, we conquered it very easily from the Etruscans, and now we're going to be making a lot of money from it. I do have a special building here where I'm going to be focusing on trying to lower banditry in the region. Banditry is a major problem for Latium, especially as it gets richer and richer. So having in these military / kind of civic style buildings around the countryside will help lower that a lot. But we're actually quite lucky in that all three of the surrounding villages around Rome itself are actually producing resources, and they're all decent resources. Fish isn't that great, but it's helpful. And then salt is decent, and wine is definitely top of the line kind of resources that you want, which we do, thankfully. Now we're going to start heading down south here in a second, and we'll be checking out Taurus first. Taurus is the major capital of Italia, or the south of Italy, at least, I should say. And it's producing around 2,000, I guess we'll call it gold or denarii. We'll call it denarii for now, since we are playing as Rome. But that is mainly in taxes. Taurus itself does produce some grain, but I'm not really getting anything from it right now. I don't have any buildings really catered to grain. So the grain isn't really a big deal right now, but what is the taxes. And Taurus is basically going to be our base of operations for military expansion to the south and to the southeast into Greece eventually. But it will be a major hub for us invading Sicily. I'm just showing you guys some of the auxiliaries that we can also get from the town of Beneventum. And because you just build it in a certain town now, doesn't mean that you can't recruit it elsewhere in the province. So if Beneventum has a specific auxiliary unit that you can recruit it anywhere in Italia or whatever region that town is in. So Beneventum's going to be giving us some very precious, or a very precious resource, which is olives. And down here in the south, we are at our poorest town, Cosenza. which is just a rural town. It's just producing food that we do need, mind you. However, the taxes levied from the town is really insignificant, and it's not going to be a big deal if Carthage takes Cosenza early on in the campaign, at least in the campaign against them. Whereas Beneventum, we definitely want to try and hold on to and also expand so we can get more money out of the olive business there. But all in all, most of our towns and regions are of vital importance. The only one that you could argue that we don't really need is Cosenza, but we do need it to solidify our hold on southern Italy and keep our edict there up. I'm keeping taxes on normal levels. If you would like, you could go through each of the numbers there and see where all of our money is coming from. It's mainly coming from taxes. Again, I'm not going to get too into specifics, but it is worth noting that taxes and trading are by far our most precious way of making money. Slavery is actually surprisingly beneficial, and it will only increase as we continue our wars, because we will be enslaving enemy armies we defeat, at least for the most part. But as you can also see on the right, our army and navy upkeep is insane. Moving on from the economy, we're going to do a strategical overview, and we're going to go over our enemies and what we have to worry about. First, we have the Ligurians and the Insubres to the north. I'm probably butchering how a lot of things are said, so let's just get that out of the way. I apologize. This is just how I say them. Anyway, they're basically Gauls to the north. The Insubres are the master of northern Italy, I guess you could say. They are a big threat to us. They haven't declared war. I'm going to go into the diplomacy here, where you can see that they're actually at war with a small Illyrian tribe to the east, the Daorsi. I never know how to pronounce them, but anyway. They're both at war with them, which is good and bad. Bad because they're going to get more land, almost certainly. Good because they're distracted for now. But as you can see, they're actually a fairly sizable nation, and the Ligurians and the Insubres are allied, and they have a strong connection since the Insubres actually liberated them. So it's going to be a very sketchy thing dealing with. I'm going to be very paranoid about them as our campaigns continue. Here to the east, we have the Rdi Confederacy, who are military allies with Epirus, our first major enemy, really, who we are kicked out of Italy and now have peace with, except the Rdi are at war with us. If you'll remember last episode, we actually wiped out one of their entire armies that was coming in to invade Italy, which was pretty awesome. We pretty much wiped them out for nothing, but here you can already see they are sending in another second invasion, and their fleet is massive and far better than our own, so they're going to be a major threat right now, as they not only don't like us and are at war with us, but they also have the capability and the practicality to actually do a lot of damage. This isn't just a random faction declaring war on you from the middle of Germania or something. These people are just across the ocean from us, and they can attack any of our towns in any single turn they like with their navy. Their army does take a while to travel across, which is lucky, and we're going to see why it's lucky very soon. One thing you'll notice is that they are at war with Sparta, and Sparta is basically the master of Greece at the moment. I'll be clicking on them here in a second, where you will see that they actually own Macedon, and I believe the area known as Thessaly, which is northwest of Athens. And although they aren't allied with Athens themselves, they do seem to be on friendly terms. Otherwise, they would have declared war already, I imagine. But we're kind of hoping that Sparta will prove to be too much of a match for the Rdi and will actually come in and take them out, so we don't have to go to the trouble of invading the Rdi. I try to get some good relations with Sparta. I'm not prepared to send them money just yet, since we're actually quite poor. But it does indicate that they're somewhat friendly towards us and are willing, in the future at least, to establish some solid relations. Now we come down here to the major player, Carthage. As you can see, Carthage is already hitting Syracuse. They're probably going to take it in a turn or two at best. You got to remember that we just wiped out Syracuse. We wiped out their entire garrison. Although they have replenished a fair bit, they have no army there to support them. They only have a tiny little navy. So Syracuse is almost certainly going to fall within the next couple turns at least. At the moment, we can't see a lot of what Carthage has. All we can see is a big army in Syracuse, or in Sicily, attacking Syracuse, and we can see the city itself because we were trading with them. As you can see, that I was just hovering around their income. They are a massively wealthy faction. Carthage itself is producing over 10,000 denarii. That is absolutely insane, and it's going to be a very juicy war target for us to try and take and loot as the Punic War carries on. Very quickly, we'll go over their diplomacy. They're at war with a lot of people, and most of those factions are in Iberia. They are actually at war with Epirus, which is nice. It might be a sort of a building bridge between establishing relations with Epirus, which I'm open to. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, as it's been said thousands of times, and so if Epirus is willing, we'll try to establish relations. If not, it's just nice to see that they do have a lot of enemies that will hopefully keep them tied up, and they do have the two African client states to the south of them, which will be a pain once we actually invade Africa proper. Now moving on though, that's the end of our overview. I'm going to be recruiting some more naval ships to the First Navy to try and deal with this second invasion of the Illyrians coming in. We're going to try and do the same thing we did last time if we can, but it's going to be a little bit hard with the enemy's navy getting a little bit more proactive and trying to basically stop our navy from attacking their troops, which you will see here shortly. In the meantime, I do move the First Legion south. Not only do we need to stop the pirates or the Illyrians, I keep getting them mixed up. Not only do we need to stop them from invading our coastal towns to the south, but we also need to prepare for war with Carthage. Carthage is going to have Syracuse very quickly, and we need the First Legion in the south of Italy ready to respond to any threat that may or may not come from Carthage. Going a turn ahead, as you'll see, the enemy navy did come in and try and stop our navy from getting out of port. Although it doesn't blockade us, it doesn't completely stop us, they're just kind of trying to intimidate us. And since we can just go around them, we're actually going to do just that and go and attack the enemy's navy shortly, as in the enemy's transports that are transporting the enemy army. But before we do that, I just want to quickly cover the Editani and Syracuse are both wiped out. These were enemies of Carthage. The Editani were an Iberian tribe to the west. So that's not good. It's telling us that Carthage is doing well in Iberia, and we can also see here that they are definitely doing well in Syracuse, in Sicily, because they have two very solid armies and two very solid navies. This is not a good image, really. I was really expecting us to have a few more turns at least before Carthage even considered attacking us directly. That's usually how it goes, but I guess with the recent changes to AI and divided Impera, the AI is actually going to get a little bit more proactive, which is scary. But before we worry about dealing with Carthage, we need to focus on dealing with the Illyrians, who are the more immediate threat, and that is what we're going to do right here. However, I'm not actually going to show this naval battle. Why? Because it was essentially the same naval battle as last episode, except faster. It literally took just over 3 minutes. It was like 3 minutes and 6 seconds. So it went better than last time, and there isn't really a lot to show. Not even good eye candy, to be honest, so sorry for that if you did want to see it. We're actually going to release the captives. Apparently we captured a very important couple people and got like 10,000 denarii for it. That's pretty insane. But anyway, we completely wipe out the enemy army, and then shortly after that, we actually get peace with the Rdi. Us wiping out their two massive armies really put a dent in their aspirations for war and expansion, and they were willing to come to the peace table, which is amazing. I know they're not really a big faction, and they might not be a massive threat, but in some kind of weird twist of fate, they actually are, because like I said earlier, they can come and attack any of our coastal towns at any point they want. So us getting peace there is such a big deal. I'm so happy, because now we can just focus on Carthage. Not only that, but we can also prepare a second army eventually, once we get the money. It's going to take us a while. But we can prepare a second army to focus on defending against the Gauls to the north, who are almost certainly going to attack us at any point. It's really just a matter of time and luck. But right now, the First Legion is continuing its march further southwest down to Cosenza. We're going to try and save the town before the Carthaginian army invades Italy itself. We did see it on the edge of Sicily, but sadly we can't get there quick enough, and the and Cosenza is going to fall to the enemy. One good thing about this is that we're going to auto-resolve the fight, but we're going to do it aggressively, so hopefully the garrison deals a lot of casualties to the enemy army. Usually you don't, but we actually get kind of lucky here, and we do, as you guys will see here in a second. The Carthaginian army loses a lot of its heavy infantry, which is excellent, because their heavy infantry is far better than our own standard troops. They have some excellent hoplites. They have a lot of light infantry too, a lot of skirmishers, which is going to be annoying to fight. But at the end of the day, it's still better than nothing. One problem we do get is that rather than occupying the town of Cosenza, they actually liberate it. I guess there was some unhappy Italians living down there, and they actually rebelled and joined Carthage in the war against us. So obviously for this insolence, the First Legion has to crush both armies at the same time. Not only that, but the enemy garrison is actually refilled somewhat. Not fully, but it's somewhat. So we're going to be facing off against Italian militia and mercenaries and a small, fairly professional Carthaginian army once we start taking back the town. I do set the siege to start, but we're not going to jump into the battle just yet, but I thought I'd give you guys a little overview of the enemy's troops. As you can see, the Italians aren't really too much of a threat. They did hire some mercenary cavalry, which are going to be a pain. But besides that, the main threat is going to come from the Carthaginian army and their elite troops. When they have a couple of elite units, they can definitely be considered elite. But before we get into the battle, I wanted to show you guys this little thing I was trying to do. I don't know if this is going to work, but Epirus is sending what appears to be an army towards Sicily. I hope they're sending them to Sicily at least. And so I thought I would send my navy next to them to try and escort them. Carthage only has one decent sized navy at Syracuse, so maybe if they attack us or if they attack Epirus, Epirus's transport vessels, we'll get in a solid fight together with them. I don't know if it's going to work, but anyway, for now we're going to jump into the main battle of Cosenza, and I shall see you guys on the battle map. And here we are on the battle map. Luckily for us, the enemy actually sallied out of the town to defend against us, which is actually quite good for us because we have the fairly numerous cavalry advantage, which I'm really going to try to exploit against Carthage here. And also the Italians, but Carthage in particular, because we need to get around those hoplites. We have our levies in the front, the Cherusci axemen in the second line, and then in the third line we have our Principes, followed by our Hastati on the flanks. He will be used as our main flanking infantry. Although it might seem a little weird the axemen aren't on the flanking sides, I prefer to use them at first as some sort of shock infantry to try and break through the enemy line and cut them down as much as I can, and then once they get tired we'll swap them out, as you guys will see once the battle develops. I send my mercenary cavalry forward on the left flank to try and figure out where the enemy army is, and I can't find them for a bit, so on the right hand side I send up my own Italian cavalry. We got to be careful to not step on the enemy traps. Since they're defending the town, they actually get some and they deploy them across basically the entire battlefield, and we just don't need to lose any units. But in avoiding them and hiding in the forest here, or the trees at least, we actually see the enemy army, at least the Italian forces. Now not only do I want the Italian forces, I need to figure out where the Carthaginians are coming from, and then I can figure out what direction we're going to attack from, because obviously we don't want to attack from a downhill slope against uphill infantry and whatnot. As you can see there, the Carthaginian general has already joined the enemy rebels, and then over here in the far distance you can see the Carthaginian infantry there. And so to me it was a fair assessment to guess that the Carthaginians were coming in from the northeast or the top right of the map. So what I'm going to do in response is move my entire main line all the way along the left hand side, along the western edge of the map, not only to try and get us on even ground with the enemy, but also because there's some nice juicy hills up there to the west where my cavalry has already scouted out and figured out there's no enemies. So we're going to be able to use that in case the enemy pushes us, although that we are the ones attacking in this battle on the campaign map, so it's unlikely. After about 10 minutes of marching, no joke, it took quite a while, we finally moved our army forward on even ground against the enemy. They send some of their slingers up front first. They're going to be actually very annoying during the battle, and they're going to get a lot of hidden casualties that I'm not going to notice. In response to these annoying slingers, though, I'm going to send my general forward against them. However, as he gets close and begins to charge, you'll see the entire enemy army actually comes into our field of view. And so not only do we see them, but they also see us, and they see where our army is actually going to be coming from. Because before that, they were just standing around, just waiting, and they couldn't see us. But we couldn't see them all that well either once I pulled my cavalry back. And now the battle is really going to get underway. The enemy slingers send more slingers forward, but also they send some very heavy spearmen backed up by one of the enemy Italian generals. As you can see there, the man with the sword, that's the Italian general. Some fantastic looking armor. Absolutely insane how detailed it is. While this is going on, I'm moving my army forward, but I'm also sending my Italian cavalry around the rear of the enemy. They're going to be doing some damage later on, and hopefully running down some enemy routing troops. Not only do I want to crush the enemy, but I also want to kill as many Carthaginians as I can so they don't escape from the battle. It took about a minute or so for our army to move forward. I didn't want to rush them too much, but here we are now with our levies up front, letting loose their javelins against the enemy's javelins actually, who are responding, but they're only hitting our levies, they're not hitting our actual solid infantry, which is excellent, whereas we are dealing damage to their skirmishers but also their main infantry. In response to the hail of javelins the enemy's receiving, they're just going to do a full-on frontal assault against our main battle line. I'm going to pull the levies back last second. I waited a little bit too long here as I was busy trying to multitask on the flanks, and so I kind of let a few of them die, but all in all it wasn't too bad. And we even get a solid charge off with our axemen, luckily. The Turisky axemen are going to do an excellent job against these lightly armed troops, and even the heavy troops such as hoplites are going to do fairly decent. Axes and whatnot are made for breaking through that kind of armor, which is going to be excellent. Up here on our left flank, we even get lucky and get this one lightly armored unit of Italian Hastati against our axemen, and they're getting showered with javelins, and they're going to retreat within a matter of seconds. It's absolutely devastating to them. They just couldn't handle it. Absolutely incredible the amount of damage the javelins can do. But in saying that, the enemy sends in some more reinforcements very quickly after, showcasing the enemy numerical advantage that they have, which is about around 1,500 men over us. On the right flank, I'm sending the general and some cavalry to chase down the enemy slingers that were flanking us, and on the left here, I'm sending my 2 Hastati units, followed up by 2 levy units that still have some ammunition, and 1 mercenary cavalry unit that's going to be slowly wrapping up the flanks. Although I'm not going to rush that. I want to wait a little bit until our axemen fall back into the second line, which they're doing right now. You can see the axemen are falling back across the entire line while the Principes move forward and crash into the enemy. Now, while it does look a little chaotic, we actually do pull it off pretty much completely successfully. And not only that, but we have some Hastati flanking on the right, which will be helping out that. But all of our axemen pull out successfully. We take very little casualties in doing so, and although a few of them were wavering, they stabilize very quickly, and now they're going to get some well-deserved solid rest while our Principes and Hastati move in and attack them. On the left flank here, we have our Hastati outflanking them, but then we have some Carthaginian troops getting into the mix on our left flank now. We're going to absolutely demolish them with our javelins, but they are still going to get a charge off against our Hastati, although they are very lightly armored, and they only have these pathetic little wooden shields, so they're not going to last very long against us. We're actually going to outflank them with my second unit of Hastati there. Meanwhile, while that's been happening in the rear, I have my cavalry constantly harassing the enemy, and this is why my micro was rather bad on this entire battle. I have a fair bit of cavalry that I'm trying to maintain and in cycle charging the enemy, and I have it happening all around the battlefield. On the right, I have my general doing it. He is back safe now, but now I have those 2 units on the deep right, and then on the left I also have my mercenary cavalry. On the left, though, we actually have already crushed the enemy's right flank, and we've absolutely decimated them. Now they just have the center and their left, or our right. Now that the axemen have rejuvenated quite a fair bit. We're actually sending them back in, and they're going to come in with a devastating charge and absolutely annihilate these troops right here in front of them. And not only are we going to see Italians retreating en masse because they are just lowly trained, mainly militia units, the Carthaginians even are actually going to start routing. This basically solidifies our hold over the main battle line and guarantees that we're going to have victory there. But there is a lot of pockets of resistance that we're going to have to start messing up, or start cleaning up, I should say. Starting with these elite Carthaginian hoplites who just couldn't handle that solid cavalry charge to the rear. Again, not only do we want to rout the Carthaginians, but we do want to run down a lot of them, and there's going to be a lot of that during this. However, once again, my cavalry micromanagement failed me pretty badly, and this unit of Italian mercenaries or Samnite mercenaries that I had, which is our cavalry, are going to get caught out, and they're actually going to get charged by enemy Samnite mercenaries, which is interesting. But we actually are going to lose that unit to routing, which kind of sucks. It took me a while to pick up on that. I was really focused on trying to stop the Carthaginians from routing and from escaping. I just got a little too caught up in it, but that's something I need to focus on for future battles. I need to have better micro, so we'll have better results from these kinds of battles. The one good thing is that they're nailing my mercenaries, not my proper Italian units. And then a few moments later, the enemy Carthaginian general and the Italian cavalry all get caught up in a big blob, and all of my cavalry, including my general, gets in on the action and absolutely squashes them. The Carthaginian general is going to make a break for it, and he will escape for a minute or two, but from this little battle here, we're actually going to end up killing him, which is excellent. The Italian cavalry will end up routing right here, which is also excellent, and we don't need to chase down any of the Italians because they're garrisoning a town and they're going to get wiped out once they lose the battle regardless. And then that is that. The battle is essentially won. Here we have one Italian general in his very heavily armored hoplite unit holding out till the very last minute, which is kind of annoying. He lasted probably about 4 minutes on his own. This was a very long battle. But in the end, we have a close victory over the Italians and Carthaginian, I guess, alliance. And there they are. The Italian rebels are done with. They were called the Lucani, but just for the sake of ease, I'm just calling them Italian rebels because that is what they are. As you can see, almost half the Carthaginian army was completely obliterated. In fact, even more than half. It was a very successful battle for us. We did take a fair few casualties, 1,300 men lost, but you got to keep in mind a lot of those were auxiliaries and levy units, and our mercenary cavalry, which we don't care about. So all in all, it wasn't too bad for us at all. Annoyingly, the Carthaginian army does escape though. It's mainly their very light infantry that could outrun our own. They're not going to be a threat to us, but they are going to be annoying. I wish I could run them down, but we just can't. So instead of worrying about them, I'm going to focus on regrouping the 1st Legion as quickly as I can, merging what damage units we have, at least some of them, and then recruiting back into the army so we can launch a counter-offensive against Carthage into Sicily. Should only take us about a couple turns to recruit, and then by next episode, we're going to be invading Sicily, I dare imagine. So thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.